basically been the tone of most of the free speech of Minneapolis residents directed at these masked men, vowing not to let them know a moment of quiet or peace as these masked men terrorize their neighborhoods and communities. Again, a warning on the language here. I mean, I gotta say, at a purely human level, I can't imagine what is going through the minds, hearts of these federal agents who are seeing this. Is it making them question what they're doing? For some historical context here, what we're seeing, right? Random cops just rolling up on people, demanding papers, really bears striking resemblance to what British troops did to the American colonists in the run-up to the American Revolution. I mean, stopping folks in the streets, searching and harassing people on a whim without any due process.
Gustavo!
Basically using a general warrant to go door to door, no legitimate justification.
Gustavo!
And guess what? In the year 2026, the people of this country did not much like it, don't much like it any more than they did in the year 1776. This is breaking through to people in a way that very few Trump scandals have this term. And there is no sign of the resistance backing down or letting up. MS Now contributor Philip Bumps, a data journalist and creator of How to Read This Chart newsletter. Nikki McCann Ramirez is a politics reporter for Rolling Stone. And they join me now. It's good to have you both here. Phil, let me start with you because I think you've been...
As soon as I found out about the 1,000 troops coming back in, another 1,000 troops coming back into Minnesota, I knew then, I hope this government knows what it's doing, because it's basically tickling or teasing another uprising here in America, like a civil war. And I tend to wonder if that's what people want.
Nonviolent militants of people's opposition to this, and also the terror that people are experiencing at their schools, their gas stations, at their homes, everywhere in Minneapolis right now.
Yeah, it's really remarkable. And I think there are two things that really jump out to me. The first is the subgenre of videos that is out there now, which is ICE officers throwing Renee goods, killing in people's faces, and saying, did you not see what happened last week as a threat? There are multiple examples of them doing that, which is striking. This is them having killed a person and then saying, do you want to be like that person? That, I think, cannot go unacknowledged. The other thing is, it's important to remember that as we watch these videos, and I think the example of the guy at the gas station, or the naturalized citizen, was a great example. Like, what's the point? Like, what are they even doing? Who are they getting rid of? Like, it's literally just people off the street. Like, it's not as though this is being done because there is this cadre of murderers that's sitting in Minneapolis. It's being done because Donald Trump just wants to get rid of immigrants. And I think that is important to remember.
It's being done for one more reason, I would submit. I suspect you would agree, Nikki, is for the content. I mean, this is what I think is interesting,
Absolutely.
right? So part of this is, you know, Bovino, they like the show, right? And we had that example where they raided an apartment building on the south side of Chicago with Apache helicopters, rappelled down, right? And then they cut a big video together. What I think is interesting, Nikki, and I'm curious what you make of it, is they think this makes them look strong and intimidating. And I think the result of the last week of this is that this makes them look terrible, and it is absolutely alienating the general public.
Absolutely. Much of the Trump administration strategy over the past year has quite literally been to play to Twitter, play to their most rabid, most in-tune online supporters, and take that as an endorsement writ large by the country of their actions. And I think something that I feel we really need to point out is even going back to very early in the administration, when the operation to send Venezuelan migrants to Secot was filmed and distributed in a
Yep.
propaganda reel, much the same way as Bukele. That was at the very beginning of Trump's term. Last year was the deadliest year for people in ICE custody in 2 decades.
Yeah.
This is not just about filming content. The things we are seeing happening right now in Minneapolis, so many of those videos, so many of those people that are being dragged out of their cars, threatened with death, asked for their papers, their citizens, their residents, it pales in comparison to what's going on in ICE detention facilities where
That we don't
cannot
have
get
cameras. Yes, and we-
because that's what they don't want to show the public.
And we've also got, and we've started to hear some stories coming out of ICE detention, particularly in Minneapolis, but we've had it other places. It also strikes me that you're seeing, if the idea was to the point you're making about listening to these federal agents invoke Renee Good as a, like, better behave yourself, it's having the opposite effect. And it's not just folks on the street. I mean, the public opinion, we got 3 different polls out today. We got YouTube, I think Quinnipiac, and one other, if I'm not mistaken. The numbers are pretty shocking across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, majority saying they think the force was unjustified. Majority saying that, ICE should be either abolished or reduced in size. Abolish ICE being a 50-50 proposition, 43-42. What do you make of what the sort of popular reaction is to what we're seeing play out on tape?
No, I think you summarized it well, right? Yeah, the YouGov poll in particular is very striking. That for the first time that I have seen, abolish ICE actually is above the maintain ICE position, 46-43, if I remember. This is all broadly unpopular. But again, to your point about content creation, Donald Trump has never been about being popular broadly. He lies and says everyone loves him, which isn't true. He's always been about having his base be loyal, having his base stick with him. And they have drawn a very, very clear line in the sand on this, which is you are going to agree with this. You are going to agree that Renee Good deserved it. You are going to agree that what you're seeing is what ought to happen. And everything that they're doing, all the content they produce, is aimed at reinforcing that we are the guys, we're the tough guys, we're the ones doing it, so that he maintains his base, so that his base continues to put pressure on Republicans, so that Republicans don't go sideways on Trump.
The invocation I had of 1776 in the monologue is intentional, because I think one of the things that defines a free country is, like, you can stand in front of a federal agent and be like, get the F out of my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not something I would say. I'm a pretty genteel guy. but that's part of being a free society. Another example of free society is Donald Trump goes to the Ford plant today. I mean, I'm serious. This is what, and again, this isn't just some trivial thing. This is what the whole fight is about. Like, do we live in the kind of country where you can do this or not? And a worker screams at him and calls him a pedophile protector. And he flips the worker off before walking away. I think we have this footage. Play that for us. Maybe not. Sorry, we need a second. So he goes to the Ford plant. Afterwards, the White House says a lunatic was wildly screaming expletives in a complete fit of rage. The president gave an appropriate and unambiguous response. Here it is. Someone screaming pedophile protector. Again, their whole thing is project strength, project popularity, only care about the base. But that's not the reality out in the world.
No, not at all. And I think at every turn, whether it's the Epstein scandal, the way ICE is behaving, Trump's economic policies, the actions of the administration betray a lack of discipline that I think people can really see. Phil and I were talking about this in the green room earlier. If you want to make the Epstein scandal go away, which it seems the Trump administration very much wants to do, the way you don't do that is flipping off someone who calls you a pedophile protector on camera. And it's just a sign that this administration, the same way the president can't help himself from getting in front of a camera and just crafting policy right off the bat, from screaming at reporters, the same way this administration is allowing ideological goons to join a Gestapo force with virtually no training, the way this administration is constantly trying to throw Band-Aids on top of mistake after mistake after mistake, those kinds of actions have consequences. And I think the American people, I think your 1776 comparison is particularly apt because as someone who grew up in a very conservative family, one of the core ideological principles of conservatives is the thing you need to be wary about is government repression.
Yes, exactly.
That one day the government will come for you.
And that Joe Rogan clip we played at the top, he's got a longer monologue where he says, like, this is kind of the nightmare, right? When people kind of do this. Philip Bump, Nikki McCameron, great to have you both here. Coming up, Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, whose district is where Renee Good was shot. See, and across the country. That's next.
going back to the lady that got shot last week, I couldn't tell you how many different murder cases that I've heard on TV, high profile cases, that either the prosecuting attorney, the DA, or the judge or the jury would look at the difference between somebody firing one shot versus somebody firing three. If you fired one shot, they consider that a crime of passion. In other words, you let your emotions get the best of you. And you went ahead and discharged a firearm, though you regretted it later. But to sit there and put 3 bullets in somebody, knowing that that woman was not trying to run over that guy, knowing that she did not have no intentions toward wanting to harm or hurt nobody, knowing that she was very peaceful, very loving, a mother of 3, an American person, and to think that we have an administration that's protecting actions like that actually gets to it's sickening. Now we're seeing another 1,000 troops issued over to same town. And as the old saying goes, the more you stir the pot, the more it's going to stink. These people have already been put on notice back whenever George Floyd died towards the businesses and everything being burnt down to the ground. I don't know how many millions of dollars that it costed. But I'm going to throw something out there that you can take it for what it's worth, pertaining to the mightiest of the mighty, the richest of the rich, and the corruptest of the corruptest, which are basically 90% of all your insurance companies that own your insurance companies, basically 90% of all the hospital administrators, basically 90% of all the doctors, even though they have to swear off on some sort of and I forgot what you call it, basically a promise that they'll work on people regardless whether they got money or not. And your banks, you're basically your money people. If they can allow for a George Floyd or another incident like happened out in California with Rodney King to manifest itself all over the country, break out basically in a civil war, whatever gets torn up, burned up, bulldozed down, tore down, or whatever, nobody has to pay for it. Because if you look at your insurance clause, it don't matter if you own your house, it don't matter if you still owe for your house, it don't matter if your house paid off, it don't matter if you own a business or whatever. In the event of a war, your insurance company does not have to pay for any damages. Now, as long as it's sporadic and it only happens a little portion over here or a little portion over there, well, then it's still got to be covered because it ain't looked upon as actually being a war. Is it possible that these rich people that knows that they have messed up in allowing for this situation to get this far out of hand, that they are purposely doing this, even though they're saying all along, oh, no, we care about you people. We care about you people. These people are cold-blooded. They're very cold-blooded, and as far as I'm concerned, they're reptilians walking around in a earthly, bodily form. Okay? But to see this happening and only escalating and getting worse, just like I've said this before, the more humanity gets erratical, the more erratical that either our planet or the surrounding elements of our planet pertaining to our atmosphere gets just as erratical. Getting out of hand. Going in the opposite direction towards peace and utopia.
People in the streets just roaming around, snatching people up, many of which turn out to actually be U.S. citizens that just don't have their papers on them. Are we really going to be the Gestapo? Where's your papers? Is that what we've come to?
Yes,
Seeing many Americans across the country express a sentiment similar to the one that Joe Rogan proposes there. In fact, just today, YouGov released a poll showing more Americans now support abolishing ICE altogether than are opposed by a 3% margin. It's a slogan that many would have considered politically toxic just a few years ago. In fact, many did, and now seems to be resonating with voters, thanks in no small part to Trump and his allies on the right overplaying their anti-immigration hand. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar represents Minneapolis, and Renee Nicole Good was one of her constituents, and she joins me now. Congresswoman, first let me just ask about how your district is doing and what you have been hearing from the people you represent in.
I'm surprised they arrested her.
2 weeks into it, you could be thrown into the meat grinder because obviously in order to get the job, you got to upend your life to do it. So it's a point well taken. And I think the president is an outcomes-based person, and he would like to get an outcome this year, which is pal out somebody better in.
Alyssa, what do you think the outcome of this is going to be?
I mean, if anything, he might be pushing Jerome Powell to want to stay on the Board of Governors after the fact. I think Kevin Hassett's the front runner. I worked with him. He is highly qualified. I think he's well liked within the Senate and would have a smooth job. But it's the same thing. This is a job that is something that outlives presidents, that I think anyone in it wants to protect the independence of. And in that regard, it's going to be hard with Donald Trump, where he wants certain outcomes. And I would just say, I think it's absolutely wild that the president isn't happy with the Fed chair. He's gotten 3 rate cuts in a year. That's something he should be happy with. That's why we've been able to keep inflation relatively at bay. We're seeing some better economic news with the GDP growth. So I think that some of this is just really misplaced anger. And final thing also, Donald Trump is actually best when he has a foe and somebody to complain about and perhaps point fingers at when things aren't going his way. You get rid of Powell, you control both houses of Congress, and you control the White House. If the economy continues to lag, who are you going to blame? If anything, I think it's good for him to have sort of a boogeyman to point to.
Alyssa Farr-Griffin, Ben Jones, Scott Jennings, good to have you on. Thank you. Up next, President Trump sending another public message to Iranian protesters facing a deadly crackdown by security forces.
Then I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way.
Help is on its way, he says. Exactly what that means is unclear. And green
are immigrants, but it is having an impact on every single person.
The president.
It's terrorizing our communities. I was going to say this. It reminds me of the arsonist that goes out here and purposely starts a fire that is a fireman. That way he can be looked upon as being a hero because he helped to put the fire out. That's what's going on right now. There's stuff being stirred up that could be handled in a much more professional, decent, humanitarian way that people don't want that. They want to see it get rough. They want to. I am thoroughly convinced that we got people right here in the United States that want total chaos to happen. That way they won't have to give an account for the people standing up for forcing them to give an account. Because they don't work for themselves, they work for us, pertaining to the politicians. Well, it's the politicians that has failed us. Well, how come we're not going after the politicians and the bankers and all them other people that has allowed for this to get in this kind of shape to begin with? How come we're not holding them responsible? How come we're not taking over their bank accounts and getting their second and third homes and going into their bank accounts and getting them for fraud or whatever? How come this is turning out the way that it is? It's because the powerful, the corrupt, it's because of the wickedest of the wicked are doing this to us.
No, on the upcoming continuing resolution, or it's called minibus, small omnibus, to keep the government funded, barring some changes for DHS. Where do you come down on this?
Yeah, we just put out, we just had a press conference as the lead for the Progressive Caucus. Our caucus took a stand in not supporting any funding for DHS unless there are some real changes that take place when it comes to ICE and border control.
You, along with several other members, had a visit to a facility this weekend. We've seen a number of these visits to facilities. Now, there's legislation that requires admittance of Congress, members of Congress, unannounced to inspect these facilities. That was something that was put into the law years ago, and yet we've seen resistance from DHS officials, including famously in Newark, where Monica McIver was, sort of roughed up a bit by agents. She's now being prosecuted for that. What happened to you when you tried to visit a facility this weekend?
Well, we arrived, myself and two other members from the Minnesota congressional delegation. We made our presence known. We told them we were there to do oversight. We were originally let in and given an initial tour, and then 10 minutes or so in, the agent who was taking us around got a phone call. We do think it was probably from someone from DC, and was told that we could no longer continue because something about the big beautiful bill prohibited us from being able to do our oversight.
The president today is promising a day of reckoning and retribution coming to Minnesota. There's an announcement of more agents that are being sent to your district, to your city, to your state. It's now the largest operation. I think DHS is bragging the largest operation they've undertaken. What do you want? What needs to happen immediately for this situation to calm down, dissipate, find some equilibrium? It seems what's going on right now just utterly dangerous and unsustainable.
Yeah, I mean, it is more than dangerous. We've seen somebody already get murdered. We don't want to see anything like that take place. They have not been able to tell us what is the purpose for this search. They haven't been able to produce any evidence that they are finding people who are undocumented, who have committed crimes. Almost every single person that they have information and shared information with us has been someone that has already been adjudicated and was already in prison. And so there's no way to justify what they are doing. It is unleashing complete terror on the residents of Minnesota.
Do you have a message for the president who has targeted you a lot about what you want to see happen in your district?
We want ICE out of our district. We want them out of our state. We want this terror to stop. The lives of people are being interrupted. And it is not justifiable for the president to target our state and the residents of the beautiful state of Minnesota this way.
Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who represents the district where Renee Good was shot and killed. Thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Still ahead, Senator Amy Klobuchar on the exodus of federal prosecutors in the Minneapolis office. This story blew up today. It is really wild. That's going to be next.
Did you see this? James Comer, Hakeem Jeffries, clearly not getting along. Maybe Hakeem has this new illness. It's called Comer derangement syndrome.
We asked Hakeem Jeffries about this last night, and he called you a deeply unserious person, said he doesn't have faith in you to lead this investigation. How would you like to respond to him?
In the last 2 months, he's mentioned my name and made slurs at least 5 times. I think that Trump derangement syndrome is morphing into Comer derangement syndrome for Hakeem Jeffries. He clearly has a problem with me. Maybe he should go to one of those Somali therapy centers and get some type of therapy for his disdain for me.
Ooh, like that Quality Leering Center. And one of the great minds in media reminding everybody why he doesn't have a TV show anymore.
You ICE goons and federal agents who are out there, you are common terrorists. You have the nerve to call her a terrorist? Give me a break. We live in an upside-down world. In the Bible, there's lots of border crossings. There are lots of immigrants. As a matter of fact, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, immigrants.
Okay, really bad history from Donald. New York Governor Kathy Hochul delivered her annual State of the State, and I just want you to notice the sign language person who was present once again.
But people of all political beliefs are saying the same thing. What we've seen lately has gone too far, and enough is enough. So, New York will not allow the use of state resources to assist in federal immigration raids on people who have not committed serious crimes.
Okay, look, this is common sense. It's not anti-deaf or anything like that. But why do Democrats insist on the sign language person when they're on TV making a scripted speech? It's like the ultimate virtue signal, because if you're deaf, all TVs, they have closed captioning. Okay, so you can see the text. Look, I thought about this Sunday. I'm watching a football game. My son had the clicker. He hit a button, and then I couldn't figure it out until like the third quarter, how to get the closed captioning off. So like I couldn't see the top of the screen for like half the game. We have closed captioning, meaning we don't always need to do that to show people how good a person we are, or we think we are. Today, President Trump touring a Ford plant in Michigan, interacting with workers and doing what Trump does best. And you see how he was received there. Big round of applause for the president. Coming up next, we were just talking about this. Byron Donalds. Could Bill Clinton end up in handcuffs? It is finally a real possibility. We're going to talk about it with the congressman.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Coming up next, we'll have more on Iran from Democratic Congressman Chris Deluzio. I'll ask him about the new fallout from that video that he and other lawmakers reported, reminding military members they don't have to follow unlawful orders. And with Vice President Vance holding talks tomorrow at the White House with the foreign ministers of Greenland and Denmark, what Greenlanders make of the president's push to take over the island.
You know, I've got a question pertaining to all this, which is, how does all these other people and all these other countries that used to be considered our allies, including Greenland, what are they thinking about all this? I wonder what they're sitting back and deciphering in their minds towards what has really went on with the American people. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. First of all, Bill Clinton, as far as I'm concerned, should have went to jail over the illegal, bad raid that happened in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas, that they tried to cover up. It was a smear tactic in what they either done or what they didn't do pertaining to killing them people down there in Mount Carmel, Waco, Texas. Bill Clinton's got his fingerprints all over that, just like Bill Clinton's got his fingerprints all over the Oklahoma bombing. Yes. And not counting what his wife done pertaining to Benghazi.
A right-wing Twitter-addicted Trump appointee stepped in to stop the standard federal investigation into the shooting of Renee Good by that ICE agent, according to 3 people briefed on the departures. And in Minneapolis today, another 6 federal career prosecutors, including the number 2 official in the U.S. Attorney's Office there, also quit their jobs in protest because they were pressured by senior officials in Washington to open a criminal probe into the widow of Renee Good, the woman who watched her wife get killed by an ICE agent. That's according to people with knowledge of their decision. Senator Amy Klobuchar is a Democrat in Minnesota. She previously served as the Hennepin County attorney, and she joins me now. Senator, Chris. We don't have all the details here. The reporting indicates that D.C. has been pushing to essentially open a punitive criminal investigation into the, quote, activist associations of the widow of Renee Good, and that this was too much for 6 officials, including the number 2, in that office. What's your response to that?
This is unbelievable, Chris, and I appreciate you covering it. This is a treasure of an office, this U.S. Attorney's Office. Twice has won the national award for taking on complex cases like sex trafficking, solved one of the biggest missing persons case along with our federal, local, state law enforcement. The Jacob Wetterling case took the lead on that. Prosecuting a major fraud ring. And in fact, the guy, Joe Thompson, 16-year-old veteran with the office who is so respected by law enforcement, is leading the fraud cases, which I think are very important to bring. And he is the one, along with 5 other excellent attorneys, who stepped down today. They didn't give their reasons, but the news reports appear to be similar to other cases around the country. I mean, they took an oath, Chris. They took an oath to serve justice, and they took an oath to follow the law. And when they are asked to do something that they feel is not consistent with that oath, and I was a prosecutor, so I understand this, they make their own decisions. And in this case, you already had the Justice Department shutting out the seasoned professionals at the State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension in the investigation. And now we see this. And I talked to Joe Thompson today and thanked him for his incredible service. I didn't go into the reasons. I didn't want to do that because my job was to thank him. Because
now you know why the Cheneys done what they done.
Ancestry.
Now you know what the Cheneys done what they done regarding towards changing horses in midstream. We're going down the exact same characteristics as what went on right before the Civil War pertaining to bickering, arguing, fighting, and people not getting along and no compromises being made. And as I said, I tend to wonder if this ain't being done intentionally because, by and large, they know that they have failed the people. But the people are still not holding various prior presidential presidencies accountable. And when I say prior, I ain't that's not talking about the head honcho. I'm talking about the whole group of people that was working under that administration, including the media at that time. You know how many people has got stinking filthy rich in the past 30 plus years illegitimately in this country? Millions of millionaires. In addition to the heisters that come over from other countries and jumped on board toward doing the same. Jumped on board towards, hey, they wanted a piece of the pie too. So it's not just Dennis James Jackson that took it on the cheek towards being violated, abused, neglected, taken advantage of by his own people here in Northwest Tennessee. But it's millions of people that one day are going to hold these people accountable towards saying, why did you do what you done? Or why didn't you do the proper and right things whenever you should have done them?
That the resignation dealt a major blow to efforts to root out rampant theft from state agencies. The fraud cases, which involve schemes to cheat safety net programs, were the chief reason the Trump administration cited for its immigration crackdown on the state. When you lose the leader responsible for making the fraud cases, it tells you this isn't really about prosecuting fraud. One more thing that I've heard from Mr. O'Hara I would like to hear your response to is that there has been a real cost to local policing and law enforcement from the ICE CBP presence, that they are getting lots of 911 calls of vehicles abandoned in the road, of people calling 911 when ICE is at their door because they don't know who else to call, that it has actually made tangibly obstructing the public safety portfolio of the local police in Minneapolis right now.
They are making us less safe, not more safe. And there's millions of dollars in overtime now that is at a taxpayer expense for our police department and others in the metro area, simply trying to respond to citizens in their homes who say, I don't know, they're surrounding my home. What is going on? They don't have a warrant. What should I do? And Chief O'Hara has spent a lot of time building trust with the community, trust with his officers, and has done an excellent job. And so he is a voice of reason in all of this. And as he said, these fraud cases must go forward. Taxpayers shouldn't be ripped off. People who did this should go to jail.
I just want people in Kenton, Tennessee, Martin, Tennessee, Dresden, Tennessee, Greenfield, Tennessee, Sharon, Tennessee, Union City, Tennessee. I want these people to see this and understand that they will be held accountable, including their judges and their prosecuting attorneys and their probation officers and their DAs and etc. You will be held accountable. And if you don't get held accountable in this life pertaining to our laws, you will be held accountable in the lifetime to come pertaining to God's law.
Looked like civilian aircraft was part of a highly classified program in its first attack on a boat that the Trump administration said was smuggling drugs. The New York Times, which first reported the story, as you know, is pointing to laws of armed conflict that prohibit feigning civilian status to fool adversaries. I'm wondering what questions you might have about that, if any, and is there any reason to think there would be an investigation?
Well,
Or should
one,
there be?
of course, the law of armed conflict applies here. We ought to get to the bottom of what happened. These are serious allegations. I don't want to get ahead of any kind of investigation, but this is the kind of oversight that we should do in the Armed Services Committee where I serve in the House. Again, these are serious allegations. Let's not guess. Let's just find.
Florida Safari? Great question. Like everything.
We are no longer going at things in the proper protocol as far as I'm concerned. And because of it, it's going to do more damage than it does good, I think. Good luck to all of us. God bless America. God bless our troops. Thanks a lot.